What's going on, everybody? Tom here with Black Sheep Keto, and welcome to another recipe video just for you subscribers out there. And if you're not a subscriber yet, please consider doing so. Now today we're going to continue our keto holiday treat section with some delicious keto peanut butter cookies. Now this was requested to us from one of our good friends, Keto Candace, and she wanted a chewy keto peanut butter cookie. So I decided to take on the challenge and try to make it. So if that sounds good to you guys, hang on tight, let's get right into the recipe. Alright everybody, welcome to the recipe. Now we have all of the wet ingredients for our peanut butter cookies laid out here in front of us, but I just want to quickly remind you guys that the macros and written recipe are going to be down in the description, so check that out if you want those. But first, let's go through all of these wet ingredients one by one. So right here I have half a cup or 1 stick of softened butter. We have half a cup of crunchy peanut butter. I do find that the crunchy stuff does work better than the smooth, and you can usually find ones at the grocery store that literally the only ingredient is peanut butter and maybe sometimes some salt. Then we have 1 egg, 1/3 cup of allulose, 1/2 cup packed of Swerve's brown sugar replacement. This is an erythritol base. And then right here we have a 1/4 teaspoon of liquid stevia. Now you may be wondering why there's a lot of different sweeteners in this, and one of the goals of this recipe was to have pretty much zero aftertaste from the different sweeteners we used. So it did require a balancing of multiple sweeteners to achieve that. So that's really what we're doing there. Now we're going to go and add everything to this bowl and get it all mixed up with an electric whisk. You can do this with a stand mixer, but for me it's kind of hard to film that, so I'm just going to use a hand mixer for this. So let's get going on that. Add our peanut butter in there, the allulose, brown sugar replacement, our stevia, and then finally 1 egg. And then we're going to go give this a mix with our electric mixer. Now that this is all well combined, we're going to go ahead and set it aside while we work on our dry ingredients. Alright guys, I have reset here, and here are all of our dry ingredients. So in this bowl I have 1 3/4 cup of fine almond flour. Make sure you've broken up all the clumps. You can either use your whisk to do that, or sometimes I just like to toss it in a food processor real quick. In this little container, I have 1/2 teaspoon of pink salt. Now this really depends on the saltiness of your peanut butter. If it's a salty peanut butter, go ahead and use a 1/4 teaspoon. Then we have our leavening agents here. So we have a 1/2 teaspoon of baking soda and 1 teaspoon of baking powder. In the back here, we have 1 teaspoon of xanthan gum and 1 teaspoon of beef gelatin. Now I'm not really sure where I picked up this trick, but I've known about it for quite a while, but adding a little bit of gelatin to these cookies will make them chewy, which was one of the goals of this cookie. So you can use any gelatin you want. I just prefer beef gelatin because you know the source of it. So now we're going to put all this into our bowl here with the almond flour and give it a nice whisking. So starting off with our salt, we got our baking powder, baking soda, the beef gelatin, and our xanthan gum. Now we're going to give this a whisk with just a hand whisk is probably fine for this. Just make sure it's pretty well combined. That way your leavening agents and your binding agents are distributed evenly within the almond flour. So now we have our wet ingredients here and our dry ingredients here, and we're going to add them together, adding the dries to the wets in about 1/3 of it at a time. So we'll get about 1/3 of that in there, mix it in, and then do the remaining. Now we're going to add our final 1/3 and get this all well combined. If you see stuff sticking to the edges, make sure you scrape it with a rubber scraper. So now here we go, we have our peanut butter cookie dough. Now go ahead and pop this in your refrigerator while you preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Alright everybody, our oven is at 350 degrees Fahrenheit and it's come up to temperature, so now it is time to start making our cookies. Now this was in the refrigerator the whole time, and you want that dough to be a little bit firmer, which is why we do that. Now the entirety of this dough weighs 24 ounces, so that's going to give us 12 2-ounce cookies. So I got my scale set up here, and I'm just going to weigh out 2-ounce balls. That's a little bit over, so we'll go ahead and remove some of that. 2 ounces on the dot, perfect. And I figure you could probably get about 6 of these on an average sheet here. So I'll get those laid out. All right, everybody, we have our 6 balls for this particular cookie sheet. So I'm gonna do it one at a time as I'm gonna go ahead and try to roll them into a pretty good ball. And then I try to flatten them out into probably about, I don't know, about ½ an inch thick disc like so. Pop them down and move on to the next one. We'll add that nice kind of cross-hatch pattern here in just a second. All right, everybody, we have our pucks. Now, to add that signature kind of cross pattern that you have on peanut butter cookies, you really just need a fork. So we're gonna go ahead and push it down, and you're gonna flatten the cookie just a little bit to kind of make that pattern, and you're gonna go both directions. And that's all there is to it. So I'm gonna finish these up, and then I'll catch up with you right before we put them in the oven and explain that whole process. All right, everybody, we have our finished cookies right here, complete with the signature cross on there. Now, these are going to go in a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven for between 10 and 12 minutes. Now, this is a little bit lower baking temperature than you would normally bake cookies at for slightly longer than you would. The reason for this is because we don't want the bottoms to get too brown and kind of get that burnt almond flour taste. So 350 for 11 minutes is like perfect in my oven. So just keep an eye on them and make sure the bottoms don't get too dark. So I'm going to pop these in the oven for 11 minutes and I'll catch up with you and explain the post-baking process. All right, everybody, our first batch of cookies is now out of the oven and you can tell they look absolutely delicious. So your first instinct is probably going to be to just grab one off the tray and munch it down, right? Unfortunately, no, we cannot do that. As with most keto baked goods, they need to cool down before they're stable enough to move or eat. So give them 10 minutes before you transfer them to a cooling rack or 20 to 30 until you can eat them. But since we have the dough remaining for another 6 cookies, go ahead and grab yourself another baking sheet and go and do the same thing. Get the cookies prepped on here, bake it on your top rack for 11 minutes, and I'll catch up with you once all of our cookies are baked. All right, everybody, here are all of the baked cookies just hanging on my drying rack right now, and I'm gonna wait till they're fully cooled to do the taste test. But in the meantime, why don't you check out the finished product? And now, let's get right into the taste test. Well, now that you guys have seen the recipe and the finished product, we are here for the taste test. So I'm gonna grab one of these awesome looking cookies here off my little tray, and there were a few goals with this recipe. We wanted them to taste like real peanut butter cookies, be nice and chewy, and not really have any sugary aftertaste. So that is exactly what we're gonna be checking for here. So if we go ahead and look at the cookies, they actually hold together really well. When you break them, you can obviously tell that they're gonna have some chew to it. So with that, it's time to eat it. Well, guys, now it is time to answer the $1,000,000 question. Did we hit all of those goals? Now, first things first, did they taste like a peanut butter cookie? Guys, this is a delicious peanut butter cookie. It's a little bit sweet, you get that real nice peanut butter flavor, and you get a little bit of saltiness in the end from that salt that we threw in there, which I think encompasses a very delicious peanut butter cookie. Is it chewy? Well, guys, because of that gelatin that we put in there, it actually creates a really chewy texture for the cookies, which I think is fantastic, and I would say we hit that one right on the head. And when I let Candace sample some, she agreed that the texture was perfect. And lastly, the sweetness. Did we have any real aftertaste from the sweeteners? Well, we decided to balance it really well. We used a little bit of erythritol, a little bit of allulose, a little bit of stevia, so we were able to keep the quantity low enough that we don't really have to deal with the aftertastes of any of them. So I think we can check that box off too. So I would objectively call these the best keto peanut butter cookies you could possibly make. And I think you guys will agree. So go ahead and give them a try if you haven't yet. The recipe and macros are going to be down in the description. If you like this video, leave it a like. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down in the comment section. And if you have not subscribed yet, do me a huge favor, guys. Hit that subscribe button, show some love, and I will see you in the next one.